We have distractions in so many places, and it's just getting exponentially worse. A lot of us do this all the time. I'll just pick up my phone, open it to, quote, check a text, and then I end up on Instagram, and then I end up on Facebook, and 30 minutes later, I'm like, I was just going to check a text message. I like things easy. I think we all like things easy. So where can I put roadblocks in my path to break me out of these habits that I've developed over the years? Because honestly, without them, my willpower is not enough to change my ways. God is everywhere. And so to just be able to really experience that will bring peace and joy like no other, even when you are going through difficulties and hardships in life. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Catholic Women Podcast. I'm your host, Maria Hansen. Today, I am going to bring you something a little different, and I'm very excited. I'm calling this a mic swap episode, where I bring you a recording that I did on someone else's podcast, and it's going to be really good. It's all about presence and practicing the presence of God in our lives, especially in the messy middle of our lives, in between those places where we want to be, in between all those destinations we're hoping to get to. This podcast is called Thriving in the Space Between, and it's built for single women. However, lots of women can listen to it, and it's about how to thrive in that space in between, and single and married life, or married and children, or wanting to buy a house, or just whatever. We're always in between spaces in our life, and it's about how to thrive in those spaces as a Catholic woman. So I thought it would be a really good conversation to bring to you guys. I thought it was very fruitful, and I thought it was something that you should hear. So today we're going to do that. But before I share that episode with you, I just want to remind you guys, we have a text reminder program now too. So I can just text you directly when an episode comes out. It's really cool. And I highly recommend you join it so you just get the link right to your texts. Sometimes I'll text out other fun things, little tidbits, little personal things. And if you respond back, it's me. It's actually me. I will text you back. You can just text directly with me. So I will leave the link to sign up for that in the show notes. It's easier than texting a number. But yeah, just go grab that link from the show notes, and I can't wait to text with you. I think that's so fun. I personally, texting is basically my whole life. I don't really do a ton of email. I don't really do a ton of social media either. Obviously, I'm on there, but it's not my primary place. Texting is where it's at. So can't wait to text with you, and I hope you guys enjoy the episode.
All right, ladies, welcome back to Thriving in a Space Between. I'm Maria.
Hi, ladies. It's Meghan here.
And we have a lovely gal that we are excited for you guys to get to meet. Her name is Maria Hansen, and she is a wife. She's a mama, and she is the host of the Catholic Women podcast. And she just has a lot of really beautiful things to share. She's had some beautiful guests on her podcast as well. And we just felt like you would be really blessed by our conversation. So welcome, Marie.
Thank you so much for having me, Maria and Meghan. I am very excited for this conversation today.
Beautiful. Well, let's just start at the beginning, I guess. Who is Maria Hansen?
So I'm Marie. I am a Catholic wife and mom. We got married 5 years ago, but we've been together since 2017, which is 9 years ago. We actually met right as we were about to graduate high school. We met in the spring of our senior year. And funny enough, as we got to know each other, we realized we had had encounters before that. We were in the same driver's ed class. We apparently literally lived a block away from each other and had walked home, quote, together a couple of times. I was walking home with his friend, but he was behind us. And I just say that the Lord knew we were not ready to meet each other, because it would not have worked out had we met before that point, just how much we changed and evolved throughout high school. But we met in the spring doing the musical at our high school. I was really into music and theater. I ended up getting my degree in music. And he was not, had nothing to do with it. He was very into sports, and he went to college on 2 athletic scholarships. But he was recruited for that play because we did Peter Pan. And so he was the ropes guy, literally pulling the ropes. And I was an understudy for Wendy. So I had to be at all these ropes rehearsals, which were separate from the regular rehearsals. But I wasn't doing anything other than standing in the wings and chatting with the ropes guys. And so that's how we got to know each other. And we just fostered a relationship from there. We did end up going to separate colleges just a couple months later. Did a long distance relationship for a couple years. And we went through some ups and downs during that time, but ultimately we did stay together and got engaged 2019. So we had been together a little over 2 years at that point. And then 2 years later, right after we graduated college, we got married. And yeah, we've been married 5 years now. We have a 3-year-old. She'll be 4 in the fall, and then a 2-year-old. So we just absolutely love the family that God's created, and it hasn't always been easy. There's definitely ups and downs, and it's hard, but it's beautiful. And just verbalizing my story makes me realize, wow, sometimes you're so in the weeds of the everyday. It's like, wow, God has really written a beautiful story. So that's just a little bit about me.
Mhm. Beautiful. So it's always so fun to hear the how we met stories. You just see how much
Yes.
that God writes straight with a crooked line.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
awesome. But one of the topic that we really wanted to hone in on today, and I know you give some talks as well, and we wanted to talk about this idea of kind of breaking the distraction cycle. We know that we live in a day and age where distractions are everywhere. Everything is pulling at our attention. Everything is, look over here, look over there. If you didn't have ADHD, you would just by default.
Yes.
Culturally, it's like trying to focus on one thing. So can we talk a little bit about that? I know that's kind of been a bread and butter topic for you. And just when you say breaking the distraction cycle, what do you even mean by that? So let's
Yes.
just dive into that.
Great question. And we have distractions in so many places, and it's just getting exponentially worse. And so that's like an obvious one, but there's so many distractions in so many other places. So, for example, our finances. Most people don't have a solid grasp on their finances, and they're not exactly sure where their money's going every month and they don't have an account of every penny. We were very much guilty of that too, and I can get into that story. There's distractions in our relationships. I know I'm very much guilty of, as soon as my husband starts talking about something I'm not exactly like a big fan of, or I don't really know much about, I tune out in my head sometimes and I'm just distracted and not giving my full attention. Or same with playing with my kids. There's just so many areas in life where it's just easy to shut your brain off, go on autopilot, pick up your phone, do these different things on autopilot, and not actually be present in your life. And not only does this obviously affect your relationships and your enjoyment of life, but it also affects your ability to hear the voice of God and to see where He's calling you to in life. And just in that moment, like, Lord, what are you calling me to right this moment? And when we're so distracted, we can't hear that voice. We can't feel His nudges. And this really came to a head for me in June of 2024, so 2 years ago, when my second daughter was born. This is kind of when I really became passionate about changing my life and just being on autopilot for everything. So I went through, this was my second pregnancy, obviously, she's number 2, and went through a fully natural birth, which I was really very proud of myself on, except right at the very end, I was screaming for an epidural and I was literally pushing her out. But for some reason, the doctor was like, sure, let's give you an epidural. So they put the epidural in, but never even turned it on because I was literally pushing her out. And I swear that was the Holy Spirit nudging me, because I ended up having undiagnosed placenta accreta, which means that the placenta digs past your uterus into your muscles and sometimes into your organs. Mine wasn't that deep, but it digs past your muscles. And I had this with my first, also undiagnosed, but they were able to manually remove it, and I just figured it was a glitch, oh, it was just a birth glitch that happens, it'll be fine. Well, this time it wasn't fine, and it gets worse and worse every time if you have this particular condition, because it's digging further into scar tissue, and I had no clue. My doctor didn't warn me about any of this either. So after about an hour of them trying to get my placenta out, they couldn't do it. They had 2 doctors, multiple nurses. I was like a human punching bag. They were pushing on me. They had their arms up. It was so painful. So they thankfully, like I said, had this epidural placed, and I was like, please turn this on. So they turned it on to help with trying to remove my uterus. That didn't work though, and so I had to go to the OR to try a DNC, and if they couldn't get out with DNC, I would have needed a hysterectomy. And thankfully, again, because I had this epidural put in, they were able to turn it up, so I didn't need to be fully knocked out.
Mm.
And truly, I believe, like, being slightly aware, I was really, my blood pressure was almost non-existent. I was so out of it, but just being able to, like, communicate with those nurses and the doctors, I truly think saved my life, and not having to go fully under where they would have no idea, other than my vitals, kind of how I was doing. Um, and after about 45 minutes in the OR, they thankfully were able to get it out barely. They had just mentioned, like, prepping for a hysterectomy. And and then I was in recovery room for several hours just to try to get my blood pressure back up and all these things. And honestly, it truly was a near-death experience. And it made me realize, wow, I'm not, like, living my life. Like, I'm just assuming everything's gonna be sunshine and rainbows. And who really knows, like, when we're gonna be called home? It could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be when I'm
Mm.
100 years old. I don't know, but I have become so accustomed to just living my life on autopilot and not making conscious decisions about how I'm spending my time, who I'm spending my time with, where I'm giving my attention, that something needs to change. So that was really the spark for me. And it really sparked me going down this journey of figuring out, okay, I like things easy. I think we all like things easy. So where can I put roadblocks in my path? And I've always thought of roadblocks as a bad thing, but roadblocks in my path to break me out of these habits that I've developed over the years. Because honestly, without them, my willpower is not enough to change my ways. Like I said, I like things easy. I don't have the willpower to do it. So that really is what sparked this journey for me in figuring out ways to do
Mm.
this in all different aspects of our life.
Wow. Wow, Marie, thank you for sharing this beautiful testimony and story. I'm so glad that you're okay. I'm so glad that your precious second born is okay.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of women can put themselves in your shoes, maybe not with a near death, like surgical and birth experience, but definitely a moment of like a rude awakening, right? Like that
Mhm.
phrase, like rude awakening. Like we don't really want to be awakened. It's kind of like a rude awakening, like when your mom wakes you up when you're in high school and you're like, I wanted to sleep longer.
Yeah.
I wanted more sleep here, but you know that you need to get up for school or whatever it might be. I would love
Mhm.
to hear a little bit more about kind of this awakening and like awakening to like I was living my life on autopilot and now I want to pivot things. When you say you placed roadblocks for yourself, like in your life, can
Mhm.
you walk us through some of the examples? Because you've talked about a lot of really great examples of like technology and finances, etc. So what were some of
Mhm.
those roadblocks that you put in place in those different areas that then helped you show up not on autopilot?
If you're anything like me, you want to care for your body the way God designed it, simply, naturally, and without all the junk we really don't need. That's why I love North Idaho Tallow. Their skincare is made the old fashioned way using grass fed beef tallow, which closely mimics our skin's natural oils. No harsh chemicals, no synthetic fragrances, just nourishing ingredients that actually work. As a busy mom, I really don't have time for complicated routines, and I want something safe for my family. Gentle enough for sensitive skin and effective. North Idaho Tallow checks all those boxes for me, from their deeply moisturizing balms to their clean traditional soaps. If you've been wanting to simplify your skincare and choose something wholesome and thoughtfully made, I really encourage you to try it. I absolutely love it, and I have their tallow on right now. You can visit northidahotallow.com and use the promo code MARIE10 for 10% off your order. That's MARIE10 for 10% off. It's a small way to care for yourself so you can keep pouring into everyone else. Spring in the church is a beautiful season. Across parishes and schools, families are preparing for First Holy Communion, confirmation, and welcoming new Catholics through OCIA. These are sacred moments, milestones where our children receive the grace of the sacraments and grow closer to Christ. At Party Like a Saint, they believe these moments deserve to be celebrated with joy and intention. That's why their family-run business creates Christ-centered decorations, party favors, and banners made in the USA to help families, classrooms, and parishes celebrate the faith. Simple to set up, beautiful to display, reusable year after year. Because every celebration is an opportunity to plant seeds of faith. Visit partylikeasaint.com and start planning your sacrament celebration today. That's partylikeasaint.com. Happy Nest Home Goods is on a mission to help you do ordinary things with extraordinary love. They offer a wide variety of Catholic gifts and crafts designed to bring God into all the little moments of your life, including Catholic jewelry, lapel pins, stickers, magnets, and Catholic embroidery kits. The heart of Happy Nest's ministry, though, is their line of sacrifice beads. Sacrifice beads are a beautiful devotion practiced by St. Therese of Lisieux as a little girl. Anytime you have something to offer up, like choosing patience instead of anger, suffering a disappointment, or completing a challenging chore with love, slide a bead towards the crucifix while uniting your sacrifice to Jesus' great sacrifice on the cross. Happy Nest Home Goods crafts all their sacrifice beads lovingly by hand to create a beautiful and durable product. I have them, and truly they are absolutely stunning, beautiful, and such an easy way to bring Jesus into your day, especially as a mom. Choose from a wide variety of both masculine and feminine beads, or even order a set with custom saint medals featuring your own engraving on the back for an heirloom sacrament gift. Flood the world with God's grace by transforming ordinary moments into intentional acts of love. Check out Happy Nest Home Goods at www.happynestHomeGoods.com and use code CatholicWoman, all uppercase Catholic Woman, for 10% off your order. That's happynestHomeGoods.com with code CatholicWoman. Yeah, great question. So the first, after I kind of recovered a little bit, I was like, we took a big look at our life. I'm like, something's got to change. And the area we decided we wanted to focus on first was our finances, because they were kind of a mess. We were in debt, which was stupid because we had been debt-free already before in our marriage. We had paid off our debt aggressively. We're debt-free shortly when our first was born, and then accumulated debt again. We were struggling. We were living paycheck to paycheck, but honestly not even that. We were going negative every week by a little bit. My husband was working a job, and then I was nannying. So this is when my second was born. I had my oldest, who wasn't 2 yet. She was 20 months when my second was born. I had my newborn, and then I was nannying 3 other kids. I had one boy who was full-time. He was 6 months old at the time, and then I had 2 part-time kids, and they were like 1.5. So I had 4 kids in my house under age 2 pretty much every day. And we were struggling, and I was like, I can't keep this up, but we had to at that time financially. And so that was the first place we were going to start, because I was like, you know what, if we could have a little more breathing room with our money, I think I would be better mentally, and then we could, work on all these other things. So we picked our finances, and personally, we used Dave Ramsey, but now that I know about Wallet Win, I would choose them because they're basically the Catholic Dave Ramsey. And we followed all of his baby steps. So we started with the $1,000 emergency fund, and then we started getting aggressive with all of our debt. So my husband got a second job, and I started doing miscellaneous things. So, for example, I was exclusively pumping for my second. She never latched. Which is funny because my first never took a single bottle in her whole life, and my second was exclusively bottle fed. But I was an overproducer, so I started selling my extra breast milk for extra money. I also started a side business during that time to make some extra money. And then I also got into flipping, which is a riskier business, but I was in a hot market at that time. I don't do it anymore. But I was doing all these little side things to just add more money, because you can only pay off your debt with, money. So we had to up our income even more to start paying off our debt. So it was really hard. I was working multiple jobs. My husband was working multiple jobs. He'd get up at 6 and I wouldn't see him till midnight. And then we'd do it all again. And this was with a newborn and a not even 2-year-old. But we went scorched earth for a year and were able to pay off our debt. And the thing that we realized was that roadblocks were what helped us get there, because up until that point, we had used a credit card, would pay it off. But we're like, you know what? We're not actually feeling the pressure of our spending. So we froze our credit cards. We literally went into our account and froze the cards so we couldn't spend them. We could only spend debit. So that was number 1 roadblock we put in place. Number 2 was we started actually doing a budget, and I made it a habit to do it every single day. So we used the EveryDollar app. And at the beginning of the month, we would divvy out our money. And then every single day, because we paid for the premium version where it just pulls in your expenses, I would drag and drop to see where we were falling every single day, to see if we were going to be on budget for the month for food, or if I'd have to pull from another category, etc. And then the third roadblock, which really, really helped, was to set auto drafts up for our accounts. So when my husband's paycheck got put in, he has a variable income because he's hourly. So we would budget for a very small amount, or not a small amount of it, like the minimum amount we could afford to just take, for our monthly expenses. And then everything over that, we had it auto deposited into a separate account that was going to be used for paying off debt. So that way we couldn't even touch the money for, buying our everyday things. It was automatically going to pay off debt. And then same thing for saving. Because I own a business, I have to auto draft my own taxes. And for a while, I was just kind of like, we needed all that money. So I was just praying at the end of the year I could find the money to pay the taxes. And I said, nope, enough of this. So I started auto drafting every single time I got paid 25% into a separate account for taxes. And just putting all these things on automatic helped my brain not have to think about it, helped me not have to do these calculations of like, okay, how much can I spend here? And do I have enough for taxes over there? And those were all the roadblocks we put in place to get out of debt, but we've since put even more in place. We since have created multiple accounts, almost like envelopes online, where we auto draft money now. For example, you will have recurring expenses each month. So you'll have like your rent or your mortgage. So we have divided that out by 4 weeks, and that amount every week gets put into a separate account. So at the end of the month, we always have how much we need for our rent. And then we've done the same for all of our other automatic payments. So things like phone bill, which don't change, internet, my daughter's dance class, all those expenses that are the exact same every month. We totaled them up, divided it by 4, and we auto draft that money out every single week. So that way we don't touch it. That way when a recurring expense happens, we have enough money. And that way we know what's left in our account is our like flex money for the week for things like groceries, diapers, things like that vary in expenses. So that was like the first big overhaul of our life, was our finances. And it was a rough year. And I'm not going to say we're like sunshine and rainbows now. We're not. It's still rough. Money's always tight, but we are in such a better place than we were then. And it's those roadblocks, literally just auto drafting money, freezing our cards and only using debit, things like that pulled us out of that financial hole we were in and set us on a much easier path. And it's easy. I don't even have to think about it anymore. It took some work up front to like shut those cards off and to do the math of how much we need to pull each month. But now that it's just running on autopilot, now I'm not going to touch that money. Now I'm not accidentally going to overspend on our groceries and pull out of our rent on accident because I have these roadblocks in place.
We actually had Amanda from Wallet Win on our podcast,
Yeah,
and I love
awesome.
just the breakdown. Yeah, she's so great. But I love the intentionality. Like what I really hear behind everything you're sharing is just this mindfulness, this intentionality of like, I'm putting roadblocks. Basically, I'm putting things in place where I'm not constantly having to think about, but I've already made this decision.
Yes.
And I wonder, so our audience is primarily single and dating gals, Catholic, in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And, we love to talk about just this intentionality, really being present. We talk about, everything from, are you in kind of a waiting space, or are you actually living? Do you know what your mission is in this season? And
yes.
I would love to hear your thoughts on, because we can get so distracted from things, whether it is because of debt, or whether it is because of picking up our phone mindlessly, because we're bored, right? Whatever it is. What are your thoughts? Do you think that there is an element of that distraction is trying to protect something? Like if you're going to, is it mainly about technology or about all the things going on in the world? Or do you think that there's actually something deeper going on in our hearts?
Yeah, I do think it's both. I do think a lot of the times distraction is healing an emotional wound. And this is something I talk about a lot, is that we're just kind of masking the symptom. It's like a Band-Aid. Maybe you have a cut and you just put a Band-Aid over it. And that's often what our distractions are. We have deeper wounds in our lives. Like for me, I know my biggest trigger for scrolling is when I'm tired. And when I'm tired, I'm usually tired because it's been a long day. I feel overwhelmed. On good days, I don't really have as much of a desire to pick up my phone and just scroll. But when it's been a tough day mentally, at the end of the day, I just want to pick up my phone and just kind of numb it, because scrolling gives us a dopamine hit and my brain just really wants to feel good. And for example, our finances, I think that was just a bigger it was a Band-Aid for not wanting to address problems we had with spending and not wanting to address problems we had of like feeling we should have the same lifestyle, for lack of a better word, as like influencers or even parents or peers who are older than us when we were in our young 20s. You know, like it's a disconnect from the pain we're feeling, and that for me was jealousy that was showing up in our finances. So I absolutely believe that. But I also believe part of it truly is an addiction because our like things like our phones, they're made to be dopamine hits. So that industry is smart. They hire psychologists to work for them for a reason. They want us to become addicted to those things. So part of it is masking of symptoms, but then part of it is genuinely kind of like food, like ultra processed foods where they literally have chemicals that are meant to alter your brain to get you addicted to them. Some of these things that start as Band-Aid distractions become actual addictions, and I don't think they're addictions to the level that we necessarily need therapy or structured help for them in that regard. But they're minor addictions in our lives, like scrolling or spending, going shopping, or buying something from Amazon, etc. So I do think it's both and, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely follow that. I would love to get like a little bit deeper. Now we've like gone into like a lot of the practicals around like distractions and like the anecdote. It sounds like, Marie, for you is like this idea of like true presence. Like,
Yes.
how do we live in this idea, like this reality of being truly present? Because I think everyone listening to this would say, of course, I want to be truly present to the people in my life that I love, whether it's, my significant other or my friends or my family or my coworkers, right? Or anyone, honestly, that you encounter on a day-to-day basis. Like, we want to be truly present, but there's a lot of distractions that are constantly taking us away from being truly present. But first and foremost, like from a Catholic perspective, like what does being truly present or like true presence actually mean?
Yeah, such a great question. And honestly, the root of it is just being able to hear God and being in tune with Him in your everyday life. Like, we should ultimately, and I'm not there, I'm being honest, but we should ultimately be talking to God all the time, all the time. And that is true attunement with Him, like attunement to the level of Jesus and Mary. Now, we're human. We're likely not going to ever reach that, but that's what we should be striving for. And that's ultimately what presence is about. To be so in the moment that you're so attuned to what God is saying. And maybe in that moment it is like, hey, watch a movie, like you can enjoy a movie tonight. But maybe in that moment it's, I am feeling the desire to make a purchase on Amazon, but that's not wise. And just hearing that voice of God in your everyday life as Catholics, that is kind of the ultimate goal of presence, is to just be totally aware. And God is everywhere. Like, He is omnipresent. And so to just be able to really experience that will bring peace and joy like no other, even when you are going through difficulties and hardships in life. And then also specifically to like the listeners of this show, when you're kind of in that dating and discerning period about marriage, the more present you are and more attuned you are to God's voice, you're going to be much more peaceful in your discernment of marriage with a particular partner. And or not marriage, or if it's the religious life, or if it's the single life, you're just going to feel a lot more peace in that discernment because you are just very much in tune with God and you're speaking to Him frequently throughout your day.
I just love the practicals. We're so big on practicality with all
Yes.
with all of these pieces. And kind of a side note, but I'd love to hear, you with having a podcast, what made you actually decide to start a podcast? And has that played a role in, again, with being more focused, with being more intentional with your time, because again, like you said, it can be easy, right? When we're doing something that does involve technology, right? It can be easy to kind of go off the rails. So I would love to hear a little bit, what made you decide to start the podcast, and what role has that played also, because it seems like this is a mission that God has obviously called you into, right? But how have you navigated that, especially in the technology space? Because I think for a lot of people, if they were really honest, it's more technology when it comes to not being present. The majority of the time, it tends to be around the technology space. And so, how did this get started? And then, what have you put in place for that?
So for the podcast, it started back in 2020. January of 2022, shortly after we were married. Before I was even pregnant with our first, we had had a couple miscarriages. At the time, I was a music teacher at a Catholic school, and so I'd get home in the evenings, and I had no kids. We had a small apartment, so I was like, I just feel like I need to do something else with my life. And I've always been a talker. The reason I actually went into music originally was I have always felt called to like be on stage and to just move people. And for a long time, I thought that was just through performance, I majored in voice, so through vocal performance. But now I'm realizing it's that same passion, but it's speaking. God has really called me to is to speak to women, still on stage, still making a difference. It's just not the exact way I thought I would be doing it. But I felt that call to start a podcast, which is funny because I had never really listened to podcasts prior to that. I was just like, this is something that I'm feeling called to do. So we did it. I would record in my little bathroom of our apartment. And the podcast, so it started in 2022, but it went through 2 major breaks when I had my kids because it's a lot, as you guys know, to put on a full show. So it was a lot, and I took some breaks during that time. But the mission throughout has always been helping Catholic women navigate the modern world. That's simply our tagline, and that has always been. And I've prayed about changing that, but I realize the underlying thread of that is presence, because truly, as Catholic women navigating the modern world, navigating all these different areas and topics, what the root of that is how do we live a present life in all these different areas, in our relationships, in our finances. We've also talked to Amanda in our food. I just talked to the Catholic nutritionist, and just all of these different areas of our lives. How do we live the best life that we can, that God called us to, while being realistic? Well, I'm very much a realist as a mom of 2 little kids. I have very little and limited time, so I take it all. I just highly value my time and all of that. And so, so that's kind of how the podcast started, and I didn't really see the full vision for it back then, and maybe I don't even see the full vision for it now, but I see very much where God was taking it over the years, because now it's been 4 years, which is crazy, and just where He wanted it to go, even though I had no idea at the time, which I think is beautiful. Again, like, hindsight is so 2020, hindsight on how my relationship blossomed and the podcast and all of that. And so I think just also with presence, just having the courage to hear God and say yes, even when it's scary, is huge. And that's been a really big theme throughout the presence aspect I've explored over these past couple years. But with technology, I really struggled with this, and I struggled the most, I think, after my first was born, because I would just be nursing and I'd be in the dark and I'd have nothing else to do but scroll. And I didn't really put roadblocks in place again until 2024. And as someone who is in the Catholic media space, obviously some of that is going to be, I have to, post on platforms to make sure people know about us and to reach more people, which I think is a good thing. I do think social media isn't all bad, so I'm not trying to scare people away from it either. I have a social media account. I use it for the show. I even have a personal account that I just use and post a little bit on too. But being strategic with our time, saying if I am going to go on social media, I'm going on to post this post, to respond to comments, and that's it. And I'm giving myself 15 minutes or setting a timer or something like that. Or if it's, I'm giving myself scroll time, but I'm going to set an actual timer. Open your phone to your clock app, set an actual timer, then open your app. And when it's done, you have to say, okay, I am done for the day. Something else that I really struggled with was waking up and immediately turning my phone on and seeing, I say it was to see what notifications I missed, like what was the news I missed overnight, who texted me, but then I would end up scrolling. Every single time I'd be in bed and I would scroll. So what I ended up doing was a roadblock I put in place for that was I took my charger and moved it all the way across the room. Now, I know people who don't even charge their phone in their room, but I have an anxiety about, like, if there's an emergency and someone calls me, then I'm going to miss it. Because like I said, I'm the oldest of 12 kids, and this really actually did happen once. There was one time, so most people are not going to miss it, but there was one time where it was like not the middle of the night. It was very late at night, and I was already in bed. We had a baby, and my mom had called me because one of my youngest sisters had gotten attacked by a dog. And so, like, this has actually happened to me, so I think I have too much anxiety around it. But I move my phone all the way across the room. That way I can leave my ringer on. I even have it set to automatically go into do not disturb mode at a certain time each night. And it only will allow calls and texts from certain people. So like my husband, my mom, my sisters, basically that's pretty much it. So it's on do not disturb and it's all the way across the room. So that way when I wake up, I have to physically get out of bed and go get it if I actually want to check my phone. And oftentimes I'll try to just leave it there until I'm done with getting the kids dressed and breakfast and all of that, because I can just tap the screen and see if I missed a text. And if I need to respond to something, I can. But if I didn't miss a text, then I just leave it there and go about my day. And I leave the ringer on, like I said. So if someone really has an emergency, they can call me and I'll hear it. But literally putting it further away from me and turning it on these do not disturb modes so that people can't get to you, or so that these apps can't get to you, has been huge in my life for really blocking like the times that I'm most susceptible to scrolling.
Yeah, these are such good practical, just like such tangible ways to like make these shifts in our listeners' lives and our own lives. I love hearing all these ways, Marie. This is so good. As you're talking, I'm like, okay, well, this is the thriving in this space between podcasts, because we're always going to be in some sort of season in our lives where we're in some sort of space between, right? Like you even mentioned earlier, like, well, our finances aren't where we want them to be, but they're so much better than what they were before. But like, you're still in a space between, right? Like in that particular space, as you were talking about earlier. And it just has me thinking about, this idea of like distractions and trying to stay truly present to the people in front of us. A lot of times we're distracting ourselves in our spaces of waiting because we are scared of the quiet, because we're scared of what God might be asking of us, because we're scared perhaps that he might be saying no, or not yet, or not this, right? And so I'd love to like hear a little bit more like in this posture of, you talk to a lot of different Catholic women across a lot of different areas of life and different backgrounds, and also have your own like life experience. Do you also see that happening in our day and age where women are fearful and they like the distractions that we're bringing in our lives and all these different areas, whether it be like overspending or scrolling or over all the different, there's so many ways we could distract ourselves in this day and age. Do you think that at the root of that is like our fear as women of actually being truly present to what God is asking of us in the season?
Absolutely. That's definitely a huge part of it, because it can be painful to like literally sit in silence. And one of the challenges, so I have like a texting challenge, and one of the things I have people do is to like literally go one day where they don't turn on any podcasts, they don't turn on any music, whether that's at home, in your car, no TV, nothing. And the silence is deafening. And I didn't understand that phrase until I actually experienced it. It's like my ears literally sometimes are ringing from the quiet, which is so weird. But yes, we like live in such a noisy culture, and I think like a lot of that is meant to distract us from truly hearing the voice of God and addressing the pain in our own lives. And we're used to hearing about distractions in phones as the big one, money, but we can also be distracted in our relationships. And so, for example, when I had recently started dating my husband, so I started dating him, like I said, in spring of 2017. This was January of 2018. So he was off at school in Chicago, and my grandparents happened to live in Chicago. So I went down to visit him, and we hadn't been dating for even a full year yet. Now, I know for some people, that's a year is more than enough time, but we were very young, and so we needed that extra time. I was still very insecure about our relationship, as was he. And especially because we had only met and then done long distance. So we hadn't really been together a ton in our relationship, and it was still pretty insecure. We were kind of in that in-between space of like, I like you, I really do a lot, you're really fun, but like, is this the right person? I don't know. We were just in that in-between space. And I went down for the weekend to visit him, but because my grandparents live down there, I was just going to take the train back and forth to stay with my grandparents overnight and then hang out with him in downtown during the day. And so both sets of my grandparents actually live down there. My dad, he's the youngest of 16, so his parents are actually like as old as or his oldest brother's as old as my mom's parents. So it's like a whole generation separating my grandparents. One of them, my grandma's now in her late 90s, and then my other grandparents are in their 70s. So I was staying with my grandparents, my mom's grandparents, the younger ones. But I had set aside a day. We were going to just for a couple hours take the Orange Line. They live right by Midway Airport, to go visit my grandparents. have lunch with them and then head back downtown. And we were having so much fun downtown Chicago. I didn't want to go. And so I was like, you know what? We're just having fun. I'll see you guys another time, Grandma and Grandpa, but we're not going to come. And so we didn't. We ended up just staying the whole day, and, I was having fun. And then the very next morning, I get a call at 8 a.m. from my mom that my grandpa had died. He literally was making coffee that morning and had a heart attack. I missed the last chance I had to ever see my grandpa because I was distracted with my boyfriend, because I was uncomfortable with this space in between. Like this, I was just so insecure, like I said, about, going to see my grandparents with him, because it was too new for me, that I missed this very last chance. And I will never get that back. And I still live with that regret today. But now I hope I can use it to teach other people, to learn from my experience and not miss those moments, to be present and to like make those big decisions ahead of time and stick with them and not let distraction pull you away from it. And it's sad to me. Like, we don't think about distraction being a thing like that's bad when we're in a relationship. We don't want to stop spending time with someone. But the distraction of him pulled me away from plans I already had with my grandparents, and now I will never get that chance with my grandpa again. And I could not believe the timing of that. Like, literally, it sounds like a movie, the way it was timed, but that's exactly how it happened. And so it can be uncomfortable to be in these in-between spaces and truly stay present to like hear the voice of God, or even just like these big pre-planned decisions. Like, that's kind of a big part of the roadblocks, is to like make the decisions ahead of time so that it's easier for yourself, so you don't get distraction. And so I had made the decision ahead of time that I was going to visit my grandparents, but I let myself get distracted and canceled that. And that cost me so much. And so it's uncomfortable sometimes, but you will regret being distracted ultimately in the end if you let those distractions pull you away from those big important things that we had planned, or those in-between spaces where you're just uncomfortable with the quiet or the change, or not being there quite yet. I've learned that it's about the journey. That's obviously huge. This whole life is a journey to our ultimate destination. And so thinking we're going to get there finally, like when I'm married, it'll be good. When I have kids, it'll be good. When I finally buy a house, it'll be good. No, it's never good. There's always something else. And so truly learning to just live in that moment, and where God has you right now, He has you there for a very specific reason. So just live it, fully enjoy it. And even if it's hard, understand that, this moment, being present in this moment, even if it hurts, even if it's a painful moment, there is something that is sanctifying me from being right here, and always ultimately turn it back to God. Like, Jesus is the ultimate. He's the person who understands the greatest love and the greatest pain. He was so unfairly and unjustly, murdered just for being him. And that's just so unfair. And it hurts sometimes. Like, there's so many times in life I'm like, this is so unfair. This hurts so bad. But no one understands that better than Jesus. And so He has you there to meet Him in His suffering and to unite it with Him and His cross.
Thank you for sharing that story, Marie, because, something we talk with our girls about is this idea that we can have a version of utilitarianism creep up in our life, where, I'm not going to make plans with somebody on this day because what if something better comes up, right? Or I'm making plans with someone, but I'm still kind of like, if something better, quote unquote, right, comes up with this, then I'm gonna cancel, and rather than recognizing no, but really kind of letting our yes be yes. Not that we can't ever make exceptions, but really recognizing the gift of the person that's in front of us, recognize the gift of that moment, and being truly present to that. And I think your story is so powerful in that, of just the importance of committing to something and taking that steps. Because I think one of the things we've seen with coaching so many women is that there is a fear of commitment. There's a fear to let our yes be yes with something, to actually say, yes, I'm going to see this through. I would love to hear a little bit, what do you think are the ways that distraction can kind of quietly erode our relationships, our friendships, our vocation, our mission, because there's so many. I love that you even gave that example of just, yes, you were with your boyfriend, but you let him become a distraction. right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than probably what you were actually, what you'd committed to, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because we can all do that so easily. So yeah, maybe we can dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's also a good reminder that the things that distract us aren't necessarily in themselves bad. Like my boyfriend, now my husband, he's not bad. He was a good person and we were, enjoying our time together. It was a good thing. But when we've already said yes and we've made these other commitments, it's a good thing to follow through with them. Like ultimately, my boyfriend and I, we would have stayed together had I still gone to my grandparents' house. Or, like let's say you make a date to go out with your girlfriends, but you got asked out on a date that night too. You can say, you know what, I already have plans with my friends, but can we go out tomorrow? Or it's not going to be the end of the world. And it's important that as people, we follow through with what we commit to. That's a huge virtue to have. And that's going to help us not only just, be good people in life, but in our spiritual lives, when we say yes to our yes and let our yes mean yes and let our no mean no, that's going to affect us spiritually too. It's going to be easier to say no to sins, and it's also going to be easier to say yes to confession and reuniting with Jesus when we're ready to reconcile that. So it goes much deeper than just being distracted and like physically not being mentally there or physically not being there and, choosing to be somewhere else. It goes much deeper than that. It goes spiritually as well. And so I think it's really important for people to grow in the confidence to say, like, if I'm going to commit to this, I'm going to see it through. And I may not like it. Maybe I'm going to say yes to this date and it might be the worst date ever, but that's okay. I'm going to see it through. And then I'm not going to have a second date. And that's okay. We just really need to be confident. And I'm still working on this, but we need to be confident in our decisions, in our discernment, but also not let discernment get in the way of things. I know people can spend so much time like ruminating on, should I say yes to this date or should I say yes to this commitment? It's ultimately not that big a deal. Is it a sinful thing to do? If no, then it's not going to be the end of the world if you say yes or no. Just whatever your heart's telling you. And if you're in the middle, go with the yes. I always tend to lean towards the yes because if you're not sure, might as well try that adventure. Maybe God has a great adventure plan for you. Maybe it's your future husband. Maybe it's just a fun girls' night that you needed. If it's not a clear no, then try it. And if it's horrible, then you don't have to commit to it long term. But always just, be more willing to go on those adventures literally or just emotionally and spiritually with the Lord. You never know what he has planned. Just like my podcast, I had no clue what he had planned for it. And now it's absolutely beautiful. And it's, it's changed my life. It's changing other lives. And I just didn't know what he had, but I felt that calling and I said, we'll try this. And so I think it's really important for people to just have that presence in their lives so they can hear the voice of God and not be afraid to say yes to it. Though it is hard, I admit.
I mean, I often tell our gals, if I could pay to have like a billboard, like if I could have 10 billboards like for the rest of my life, what would I put on those billboards? And something that both of you guys said, like have your yes be a yes would be something that I would probably put on a billboard. Like make like your yes is meaningful. Have your yes mean yes and your no mean no. I think we live in a society where it's really easy to flip flop so often and be wishy-washy. And so to be a woman of integrity where her yes means yes and her no means no is going to bring you really, really far. Not only just honestly, in every single aspect of your life.
So what would you say to the gal who's listening to this and she's saying, okay, Marie, I know that I need to start working on being more present and I want to do that. But what I'm especially afraid of is the emotional space because I'm afraid to sit with the emotions. I'm afraid of what that will be. What would you say to her?
Go to adoration and sit with the Lord and bring that all to him. Since I've started going to adoration regularly, which is hard as a mom who works from home, it has changed my life just because I bring him all of those anxieties, all of the fears, and I just lay it down and say, you know what? I can't see more than the next couple steps. Maybe sometimes I can't even see the next step, but you will be a light to my path. You will show me the next footstep, and I trust in you. And just sit with it. Literally sit in the silence and just see what he places on your heart. And then once you bring that to Jesus, actually take an inventory of your life and see which area. Don't attack it all at once. I didn't do that. It's impossible to do that. But see which area of your life really could have the quickest benefit from becoming less distracted. Is it your finances? For me, it was definitely our finances because I knew how much it was stressing me out. It affected, so much of my mental and physical health. It affected what I was doing for work and how I could show up on my show and just all these other things. It was affecting so much. I was like, this is where we need to start. But maybe for someone else, it's their phone. Maybe it's a bad friend in your life. Maybe it's a good friend in your life. Maybe it's a boyfriend, or there's just so many places that can be distractions for us. So take an account of your life. Say, where am I distracted the most? And which one, if I change today, would have the most positive impact on my life? And then start with that one. Start and say, okay, what can I change? What's one thing that I need to change? And how can I put that on autopilot? How can I change this aspect about my life? What roadblock can I put between me and this distraction that makes falling into this distraction trap much harder to do? And that's the simplest way to do it. Do that, put that roadblock in place. Once you have the effects of that, you'll be like, wow, you'll get a dopamine hit. You'll have all these things happen, and then it can snowball. Then you can say, okay, here's the next thing I need to work on, and the next thing. It's like a financial snowball. Once you start paying off debt, it just accumulates and accumulates. Same with our distractions. Start with one small thing, and when you have that win, you'll be motivated to have another win and another, and it's just this beautiful snowball effect in our life. But start small, bring it to the Lord first, and then figure out where He's calling you to make your first change.
Maria, you are such a bright, positive, you have such bubbly energy. I love it. And just you've just shared so vulnerably with all just your stories. Yeah, really taking an insight into your interior life and into your marriage and into just so many really beautiful examples of ways that, you have made decisions to pivot in different areas of your life to find, honestly, freedom. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're all searching for, right? Is freedom in Christ and freedom
Absolutely.
in being truly present and not being bound and shackled and imprisoned by the walls of distractions that we often have around us. And many times
Absolutely.
we're the ones who are placing those distractions around us, right? So
Yes.
this is a Thriving in the Space Between podcast. And so we always love to ask our guest, what is one way that you are intentionally trying to thrive in your own space between? This could be a space between, you had mentioned earlier about finances. It could be a space between in any area of your life. What's one small thing you're focusing on right now in a space between?
Yeah, so it is our finances. We would love to buy a house. I would love to buy a house. We still live in a small apartment, and we have 2 kids and a dog, and it's just hard. So, what I've really been working on over this past year is realizing this is part of the journey. God is pruning me a lot, especially through our finances, but also changing me. He's teaching me obedience. He's teaching me self-discipline through this. Had we just had a house right away, I don't know that I would have gone through all of this, to get our finances in order. And so that's what we're really working on. We can see the end. We're not quite there. But we know it's down the road, and it's just really hard. We just want it, but we're not there yet. So we're really working on just being present, letting it be painful sometimes, and letting, also sitting in the hope and joy that we will get there one day.
Marie, how can people find you?
Yeah, well, if you're listening
What's
to
the name of your
podcasts right now,
podcast? All the things.
yeah, you could just jump over to mine. It's called the Catholic Woman Podcast. Pretty easy to look up, Catholic Woman Podcast. And like I said, there we have conversations about how to navigate the modern world as a Catholic. So we cover lots of topics, but all pertaining to that. And then if you want to bring me to speak, I speak at women's groups and retreats, both in person and virtually. Plus, I also have a super simple texting program. So if you're I just, need simple reminders to be more present in my life, it's only $5 a month. And I send 3 texts a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that are meant to put an actual roadblock in your path every day, kind of break you out of that impulse cycle and just kind of pull you out of your distraction cycle a little bit. So it's only $5 a month, and both the speaking info and the texting info can be found at my website, which is catholicwoman.co.
Amazing. Well, Marie, we are grateful for you. We're grateful just for the goodness and beauty that you are bringing into the world and your yes to the Lord and your presence of just who you are. So thank you for being here, ladies. If you're listening to this, hop on over to all of the goodness that she has. And we will have all of this in the show notes. And ladies, we will see you next time on Thriving in the Space Between. Bye.
Bye, ladies.
All right, you guys, I would love to know what you thought about this. Did you like the mic swap episode? And what did you think about that topic? I really am passionate about presence. It's something I'm really working on, and it's made a huge difference in my life. And I just feel like everyone needs to also join the presence train, because if you're not present in your life, you're not really living your life. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. DM me, text me if you're in our text group. And I also want to say thank you so much to Happiness Home Goods, Party Like a Saint, and North Idaho Tallow for sponsoring this episode. It was so beautiful, and I would love, seriously, just let me know your thoughts on the podcast swap and this topic in general. Thank you guys so much for being here. I love you all, and I will see you in 2 weeks.